Chapter 1: The Betrayal. Sophia's world shattered when she uncovered the betrayal of her best friend and partner. But instead of crumbling, she built a plan. Revenge like no one expected. Watch as her patience turns into a masterful strategy, unraveling their lies and exposing everything. The truth comes out, and karma takes its course. Who will be left standing in the end? It was a Friday morning, just after 9 a.m. The sun was shining through the kitchen window, casting soft beams across the coffee table. I was sitting in my usual spot by the window, a half-empty mug of coffee in my hands, my laptop open in front of me. I had just started typing a new article for an online magazine. Freelance writing was supposed to be a dream job, flexible hours, working from home, but lately it had felt like a cage. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I was just in a rut. It wasn't like me to feel stuck. I took another sip of coffee, staring blankly at the screen. The soft clicking of the keys echoed in the quiet apartment. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text message. I glanced at it briefly, thinking it was a friend checking in about some project, but it was from James. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from him in a few days. I opened the message, expecting something light and casual, maybe just a "how's it going?" or "miss you." Instead, it was a forwarded text from Ella. It was just a few words. "I'll see you tonight. Can't wait to be with you again." I froze. My blood ran cold. Ella, my best friend? And James, the man I was seeing for over a year. A sudden, overwhelming wave of nausea washed over me. It felt like I was drowning. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the fog in my mind. This couldn't be happening. I read the message again, my hands shaking. I was shaking. I clicked on the contact information, my fingers moving faster than my brain. I dialed James's number. It rang once, twice. I could hear my heart beating in my ears. On the third ring, he picked up. "Hey, Soph, what's up?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why did you send me that message? Why did you send me Ella's text?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. It wasn't the kind of pause that said he was thinking. It was the kind of pause that said he was already calculating what to say. The silence was heavy, thick, suffocating. I didn't mean for you to see that," he stammered. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. I had to hold it together. I couldn't lose control now. I couldn't let him see how much this hurt. "How long, James?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How long has this been going on?" He sighed. "Sophia, Don't," I cut him off. "Don't you dare lie to me. Just tell me the truth. How long has it been?" Another long pause, this one even longer than before. Finally, he muttered, "A few months. I'm sorry. It just happened. Ella and I. We've been seeing each other." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. A few months. He'd been seeing her behind my back for months? My mind spun, my thoughts racing, trying to make sense of the situation. James and Ella, my best friend, the man I trusted with everything. I could feel tears welling up in my eyes, but I blinked them away. I wouldn't cry in front of him. I wouldn't let him see me break. "I don't want to talk to you right now," I said quietly. My voice was steady, but I could feel the anger bubbling just beneath the surface, threatening to explode. "I'll figure this out myself." Before he could respond, I hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at my phone, the screen still open on the message. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that Ella, the woman I had shared everything with, had been betraying me for months. I had trusted her. I had called her my best friend. How could she do this to me? I could hear my breath coming faster, my chest tight. The pain in my heart was suffocating, but I wasn't going to let it take over. Not now. Not yet. I grabbed my phone again and started scrolling through my messages. I needed more information. I needed to know what had been going on behind my back. I wasn't going to confront them yet. I wasn't going to let them see how much this was destroying me. Instead, I would gather everything I could, every text, every email, every detail. I would make them both regret ever thinking they could get away with this. It didn't take long to find more. A few texts from James to Ella, a picture of the two of them together. I felt a deep pit form in my stomach, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't look away. I needed to know. I spent the next few hours sifting through the messages, reading everything I could find. It was all there. The secret meetings, the late-night conversations, the "I miss you" text that James had been sending to Ella, the ones I had never seen. I felt like I was suffocating, like I couldn't get enough air into my lungs. Then, just as I was about to put my phone down, I heard it. Ella's voice. She was talking to someone on the phone. I froze, holding my breath as I listened in. "Yeah, I'm just so tired of pretending everything's fine with Sophia. She doesn't understand me. She never has. I just need James. He makes me feel like I matter. Sophia's been so distant lately. She doesn't deserve him." I felt like someone had just slapped me across the face. My hands trembled as I listened, my body going cold with disbelief. Ella was playing the victim. She was turning this all around on me, making me the villain. I had been nothing but kind to her. I had trusted her with everything, and now she was turning it all into a game. She had been pretending to be my friend, all while she was sleeping with my partner. The anger inside me grew, but I held it in. I wasn't going to let her see me break. Not yet. I had a plan, and they would regret this. They would regret ever thinking they could get away with it. I put my phone down and took a deep breath. This was not the time to confront them. I needed to think. I needed to make sure I was in control. The betrayal stung more than anything I had ever felt, but I wouldn't let it destroy me. I would use it. I would use this anger to fuel me. They wouldn't see me coming. For now, I would stay calm. I would gather every shred of evidence. I would wait for the perfect moment to strike. But when I did, they both would wish they had never crossed me. The chapter ends here, with Sophia beginning to formulate her plan and holding back the emotional storm inside her, ready to take action when the time is right. The quiet resolve sets the stage for the upcoming chapters, where she will confront the betrayal head-on. Chapter 2. The Plan. I spent the next few days in a haze of planning and organization. The betrayal that had shattered my world was now my fuel, and I wasn't going to let it consume me. Instead, I focused on what I could control. The first step was simple. I needed to secure my finances. I called Rachel King, my lawyer. We'd worked together for years on various contracts, but now she was going to help me with something far more personal. "Rachel, I need your help with something," I said when she picked up. Her voice was calm, familiar, reassuring. "Of course, Sophia. What's going on?" she asked. "I found out about James and Ella," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "I'm going to need to protect myself, financially and legally. Can you help me set up a trust? I don't want him or her to have access to anything that belongs to me." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before she spoke again. "I'm sorry to hear this, Sophia. I'll make sure everything is in order. We can start immediately, and I'll have everything ready as quickly as possible." The relief that washed over me was momentary, but it gave me the strength I needed to keep moving forward. I knew this was just the first step. I set up a meeting with my accountant, a woman I'd worked with for years. Her office was just a few blocks away, but I felt a sense of urgency, like every minute counted. When I walked in, she was already sitting at her desk, going through some paperwork. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. "Hi, Sophia. How's everything going?" "Not great," I replied, sitting down across from her. "I need to take a hard look at my finances, make sure everything is locked down. I need to make sure James doesn't have access to anything." She raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. She was used to my privacy and understood that if I needed something, I'd ask. "Let's go over everything," she said. pulling up my financial statements on her computer. We'll set up an account that only you can access, and we'll make sure that no joint accounts are being used without your consent. It felt good to have a plan in motion, something tangible that I could control. While she worked on the paperwork, I pulled out my phone and went through my recent bank statements, scanning for any unusual activity. That's when I found it. A withdrawal from our joint account, $2,000. Another one a week later, then another. The amounts weren't huge on their own, but the frequency was suspicious. I clicked on the transaction details. Dinner at a high-end restaurant, then a shopping spree at a luxury store I knew Ella liked. My stomach tightened. I hadn't paid attention to the small things before, but now that I was looking, it was all too clear. Ella had been living off my money. She was using our joint account to fund her lavish lifestyle while I was stuck in the dark believing she was my friend. The anger that I had carefully bottled up began to rise. I had always prided myself on being financially independent, but I had trusted James. I had trusted both of them. I took a deep breath and refocused. There was no time to waste. I needed to act strategically. The plan was already in motion, but now I needed to gather more evidence. I needed to see exactly how deep this betrayal went. I spent the next few days tracking every transaction, combing through my email for receipts, credit card statements, anything that could tell me more about what had been happening behind my back. I was meticulous, logging every detail, every purchase, every shady transaction. It was almost as if I could feel the weight of the lies pressing down on me with every new piece of information I uncovered. A week later, I was sitting at my kitchen table, the weight of everything that had happened finally hitting me. James had betrayed me. Ella had destroyed the trust we'd built over years of friendship, and I was left here with nothing but the pieces of a shattered life and a plan for revenge. James texted me again that evening. It was a simple message asking if we could talk. I stared at the phone for a long time before replying. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to demand answers, to confront him face to face, but I knew better than that. I couldn't let him see how much this hurt. I couldn't let him have the satisfaction of seeing me broken. Instead, I ignored his message and focused on the next part of my plan. I'd already set up the trust, secured my assets, and started making sure I wouldn't lose everything to them. The next step was simple. I needed to confront them with the truth. But I wasn't going to do it yet. I needed to be patient. I needed them to think they were still in control, and when the time was right, I would take everything from them. The next morning, I met with Rachel again. She handed me the finalized documents for the trust and went over everything carefully. I nodded as she spoke, but my mind was elsewhere. I was already thinking ahead, planning my next move. "So what's next?" Rachel asked, her eyes searching mine. She knew me well enough to know that I wouldn't stop until I had everything under control. "I'm going to confront them," I said quietly. "But not yet. I need more information. I need to make sure I have everything I need before I expose them." Rachel nodded, her expression understanding. "Take your time. You're doing the right thing. When you're ready, we'll be here to help." I thanked her and left the office, feeling a small sense of relief. The pieces were finally falling into place. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about taking back control. I had spent far too long being the victim. Now I was going to make sure that no one ever treated me like that again. But as I walked back to my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The evidence I had collected so far was damning, but it didn't feel like enough. I needed more. I needed to make sure that when I confronted them, I had everything to back me up. That's when it hit me. I needed to find out where else James had been spending money. Ella wasn't the only one with a lavish lifestyle. James had always been careful with money, but I hadn't thought twice about his finances. Now I had to dig deeper. I had to find out what he'd been hiding from me. I spent the next few hours digging through his recent purchases. Another high-end restaurant, a new set of golf clubs, a luxury watch. The pattern was becoming clear. He had been spending money on Ella, money that didn't belong to him. It was all part of the plan. James wasn't just betraying me emotionally, he had been using my money to fund his affair. I felt my blood run cold. I had been living a lie, and now I had the evidence to expose it. But I wasn't done yet. There was more to find, and when I did, when I had everything, I was going to make sure James and Ella never got away with what they had done. This chapter ends here as Sophia strengthens her position, preparing for the eventual confrontation. The groundwork is laid and the tension builds, setting the stage for the upcoming revelations. Chapter 3: The Reveal. And when I had everything, I was going to make sure James and Ella never got away with what they had done. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A mutual friend, Claire, invited me to a gathering at her apartment. I hadn't seen her in months, but she reached out to me, saying it would be a casual get-together with just a few people, nothing too formal. I hesitated at first, but then I realized that this was exactly the kind of event where everything could unfold. Ella and James would be there, and so would I. The pieces were in place. I showed up early, just before most of the guests arrived, and made my way through the front door. The apartment had that familiar smell of freshly brewed coffee and scented candles. Claire greeted me with a warm hug, and I could feel the tension in the air the moment I stepped inside. People were chatting, but I didn't hear much of it. My mind was focused on what was about to happen. I took a moment to look around the room, scanning for James and Ella. I spotted them in the corner, deep in conversation, their bodies leaning in close, as if they were a couple who hadn't been exposed yet. James was laughing, his arm draped casually over the back of the couch, looking relaxed. Ella, as usual, was playing the part of the life of the party, her bright smile lighting up the room. But they had no idea what was coming. I made my way to the bar and grabbed a glass of wine, feeling the cool glass against my fingertips. I didn't drink much these days, too many memories of James clinking his glass beside me, making promises that I would later learn were nothing but lies. But tonight, I needed the calm, the sharpness that the wine brought. Ella caught my eye as she noticed me walking past. "Sophia, hey," she called, her voice high-pitched, feigning excitement. I turned to her, giving her a tight smile. "Ella, how's it going?" She walked toward me, her eyes flicking over me, probably trying to figure out what kind of game I was playing. "It's been so long since we've all hung out," she said, her tone saccharine. "I'm glad you could make it." "I'm glad too," I said, keeping my voice steady. My eyes met James's across the room. He shifted uneasily, clearly uncomfortable. I didn't break eye contact as I took a slow sip of my wine. "James and I were just talking about you," Ella said, a playful smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "He misses you, you know." My stomach churned, but I didn't let it show. I gave her a polite smile, masking the anger boiling inside. "I'm sure he does." Ella seemed to sense the coldness in my response. Her smile faltered for just a second before she regained her composure. "We should all catch up later. I'm sure there's so much to talk about." "I'm sure," I said. My voice was almost too calm, too controlled, but I knew it wouldn't be for long. The pieces were in place, and the time had come to confront them. I wasn't going to let them see me crack, not yet, not until I had everything I needed to destroy their perfect little lives. As the evening wore on, I kept my distance, watching them from across the room. I was waiting for the right moment. I could feel the tension building inside me, but I knew I couldn't act impulsively. I couldn't let my emotions get the best of me. The crowd started to thicken, and more people filled the room. Ella and James were laughing, joking with their friends, completely unaware that I had been collecting their lies. It was then that I decided it was time. I stepped forward and quietly approached Claire, who was standing near the kitchen with a group of friends. "Hey, Claire," I said, trying to sound casual, but I could feel my heart beating faster with every word. "Do you mind if I say something to James and Ella? I think they need to hear it." Claire looked at me, confused for a moment. Sure, what do you mean? I just need to have a little chat with them. It's important. Claire's eyes flickered with hesitation, but she nodded. Okay, go ahead, but I'm not sure this is the right time. It's the perfect time, I said, my tone firm. Trust me. I made my way toward James and Ella, who were now standing by the window. They turned to face me as I approached. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. Hi, James, I said, my voice calm. Ella? They both exchanged nervous glances. James looked like he wanted to say something, but I cut him off before he could speak. I think we need to have a little chat, I said, my gaze focused on Ella, who immediately straightened up, her smile faltering. It's about the affair, the one you thought you were getting away with. Ella's face went pale. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. James shifted uncomfortably beside her. I know about everything, I continued. The texts, the emails, the bank transactions, everything. And I'm not here to beg you for answers. I'm here to make sure the truth gets out. The room seemed to freeze around us. People were beginning to notice, and I could feel eyes shifting towards us. I didn't care. The truth had to be exposed. James, I said, turning my attention to him, how long have you been sleeping with my best friend behind my back? He swallowed hard, his face turning red. Sophia, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake. No, I interrupted, my voice sharp. Don't try to justify it. You were never sorry. And Ella, you, turning to her, eyes blazing with anger, you've been lying to me for months. You called yourself my best friend, and this is how you repay me? By sleeping with my partner? Ella's face turned a deep shade of red. She tried to speak, but her words were lost in her throat. She glanced at James, hoping he would defend her, but he just stood there, silent, his face downcast. I think it's time we expose the truth, I said, reaching into my bag and pulling out my phone. I have everything. Every message, every email. I even have the bank statements showing how you've been using my money to fund your little affair. Do you want me to pull it up right now? Ella's eyes widened, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. James shifted uncomfortably, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his drink. I'm sorry, Sophia, James said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never meant to hurt you. Everything happened so fast. I don't care, James, I said, my voice cold and steady. The truth is out now, and it's time you both faced the consequences. Ella, desperate to save face, tried to laugh it off. You're just airing dirty laundry, Sophia. This isn't the place for this. But her attempt to play the victim fell flat. The room remained silent, the tension palpable. I stood tall, my heart racing, but my resolve unshaken. James, unable to deny the truth any longer, turned to Ella and muttered, She's right. We've been seeing each other for months. Ella's face crumpled as the room turned against her. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. The truth had finally broken through her facade. And for the first time, I saw Ella as she truly was, manipulative, deceitful, and entirely unremorseful. The room remained silent as people exchanged uncomfortable glances. I knew that this was only the beginning. The consequences for them had only just begun, and I wasn't done yet. This chapter ends here, with the public revelation of the betrayal and the first cracks in James and Ella's facade. The tension has reached its peak, setting the stage for the fallout to follow. Chapter 4. The Fallout. I knew that this was only the beginning. The consequences for them had only just begun, and I wasn't done yet. The next few days felt like a blur. The rush of emotions from confronting Ella and James started to settle, but the aftermath of everything began to sink in. I could feel the weight of the truth, not just on my shoulders, but in every part of my life that had been affected. The air around me seemed different, charged with the tension of what had happened. My friends, the ones who had supported me, felt distant. Some were avoiding me, unsure of what to say. Others, like Claire, had reached out, but their words didn't hold the same warmth anymore. It was as if a divide had been created that couldn't be crossed. I wasn't sure what hurt more, the betrayal or the silence that followed it. It took a few weeks for everything to unfold. Ella lost the support of most of our mutual friends. I wasn't sure whether they had just been afraid of the truth or if they were just too comfortable staying in her orbit, but the whispers started to fade. I overheard a few people gossiping about her at a cafe one afternoon, and it felt oddly satisfying to know that the truth had finally found its way out. Ella, who once held the power in any room, was now on the outside, trying to cling to whatever semblance of control she had left. James wasn't much better. His colleagues at work started to avoid him, the guilt of his actions hanging over him like a dark cloud. He sent me a couple of texts asking to meet. The first one was casual, almost pleading, as if nothing had happened. The second one was more desperate, asking for forgiveness, but I ignored them both. I had seen enough of his apologies to know they weren't real. He wasn't asking for forgiveness because he felt bad. He was asking because he was losing everything. I focused on my own life. I threw myself into work, something I hadn't done in a long time. My freelance projects started to pick up, and I found a new sense of purpose in writing again. I wasn't just doing it for the paycheck anymore. I was doing it to reclaim myself, to prove that I could still be me even after all of this. My days were filled with early mornings, late nights, and the quiet satisfaction of doing something for myself. But even though I had this new sense of empowerment, I wasn't blind to the fact that there were still consequences I hadn't yet seen. One afternoon, I got a message from an old friend, someone I hadn't talked to in months. It was from Rachel, one of the few people who had sided with Ella during all of this. She had been one of the ones who believed Ella's version of the story, the one where I was the one who'd pushed James away. But now she was reaching out, admitting that she had been wrong. Hi, Sophia. I've been thinking about everything, and I want to apologize. I'm sorry for not believing you and for siding with Ella. I see now that I made a mistake, and I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time, my finger hovering over the screen. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to move on, to leave her with her guilt. But another part of me wanted to acknowledge it, to say something, to let her know that her apology, though late, meant something. I finally typed a reply. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate the apology, but it's not something I can easily forget. It's not just about the lies, it's about the way things were handled. But I understand. I hope you find peace with it. I hit send and put the phone down. It wasn't an apology I had needed to hear. It didn't change the fact that I had been betrayed, but it was a step toward healing, both for her and for me. Some things couldn't be undone. The damage had already been done. Later that week, I ran into one of our old mutual friends, Sarah, at a coffee shop. She sat down across from me with a warm smile, her face full of apology. Sophia, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I should have stood by you. I didn't know what to believe at the time, and I didn't handle it well. I looked at her and felt a strange mixture of gratitude and sadness. It was good to hear the apology, but it didn't make things right. I never needed to be vindicated by anyone else. I had already done that for myself. Thank you, Sarah, but it's in the past. We can't change what's already happened. I've learned a lot through all of this. She nodded, her expression softening. I admire how strong you've been through all of this, Sophia. If I'm being honest, I've learned something too. It's never easy to watch someone you care about go through something like this. As we talked, I couldn't help but notice that the weight of it all was slowly starting to lift. I wasn't forgetting what had happened, but I was beginning to move forward, even if that meant leaving behind the people who had turned their backs on me. A few days later, I got a message from James. It was short and simple. I need to see you. Please, let's talk. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to hear his excuses, but part of me was still conflicted, still wondering if there was any chance of salvaging what we had. I picked up the phone and typed a reply. No, James, I don't want to talk. You had your chance. I hit send and felt a strange sense of finality. It wasn't a decision I'd made lightly, but it was the right one. I had to stop letting him manipulate me, stop letting him believe that I could be pulled back into his world. As the days passed, I found myself settling into a new rhythm. I was no longer a victim of their betrayal. I was stronger, more focused. I didn't need anyone's validation, not from James, not from Ella, and not from anyone else. But even as I moved forward, the idea of taking James back lingered in the back of my mind. It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the person I had become in the aftermath. I had changed, and I wasn't going to let anyone, least of all him, pull me back into the past. One evening, a few weeks after that text, I ran into James at a local bar. He was with a couple of people, but as soon as he saw me, he came over. His face was drawn, tired. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Sophia, please, can we talk? I've been trying to reach you. I made a huge mistake." I looked at him, feeling nothing but a cold emptiness. "I don't think we need to talk, James. You've already said everything you needed to say." He seemed to shrink in front of me, his hands fidgeting at his sides. "I know I hurt you. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm so sorry. Please give me a chance to make things right." But I didn't want him back. Not anymore. "I don't need you to make it right, James. You can't fix what you broke." With that, I turned and walked away. The finality of it settled over me, and I knew I had made the right choice. I wasn't going to let his manipulation define me. I was done. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. The weight of James's apology, the guilt, the confusion, all of it was gone. I was finally free. Chapter 5: The Resolution and Karma. The emotional aftermath of her confrontation with him has led her to a place of peace, but the journey of reclaiming her strength has just begun. Months passed, and with each day, I felt more like myself again. The weight of the past, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it all began to fade. It wasn't that I had forgotten, but I had learned to live with it, to turn the pain into something that fueled me rather than holding me back. My career, something I had always valued but never truly embraced, became my anchor. I threw myself into my writing, diving into projects that challenged me, that made me feel alive. And with that came success, real success, the kind I could be proud of. I had taken on new freelance work, writing for bigger publications, tackling subjects I had once shied away from. Slowly, I started to build a name for myself. People began to take notice, and the phone calls started coming in. Requests for interviews, invitations to speak at events, offers from publishers. It was surreal. I had always dreamed of success, but I had never imagined it would come to me this way. One afternoon, I received an email from a high-profile publisher. It was short, but to the point. They had read one of my recent articles and wanted to meet about a potential book deal. I couldn't stop smiling. This was what I had worked for, what I had been silently preparing for while rebuilding my life. The meeting went better than I could have hoped. The publisher was enthusiastic about the idea of me writing a book based on my experiences, the betrayal, the personal growth, the journey of finding my strength. The book would not just be about revenge, but about reclaiming your life after being shattered. It would be a testament to resilience, a narrative I could finally be proud of. It was the kind of opportunity I had always dreamed of, but now it felt different. It felt earned, and that made it all the more rewarding. But even with all the success, there were moments when I still thought about James and Ella. I tried not to, but sometimes it was inevitable. I'd see something that reminded me of them. Maybe it was a song we'd all liked or a place we used to go together, and for a second, the pain would rise again. But then I'd remember how far I had come, how much I had grown, and the moment would pass. A week later, I got another text from James. It was short, as always. "Sophia, please, I need to talk to you. I've lost everything. I don't know what to do." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell him I was sorry for everything he was going through. Part of me wanted to reach out, to show him some kind of compassion. But then I remembered how he had betrayed me, how he had abandoned me when I needed him most. I remembered how even now, after everything that happened, he still couldn't take full responsibility for his actions. I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted the message, letting it go like the last remnants of a past that no longer had a place in my life. The following week, I was invited to speak at a prestigious writers' event. It was the kind of thing I had only ever dreamed of. I would be on stage with people I had admired for years, sharing my story of how I turned betrayal into empowerment. The night of the event, I stood backstage, my heart pounding with excitement. When they called my name, I walked out to the podium, the lights blinding me for a moment. I took a deep breath, looked out at the crowd, and began to speak. I know what it's like to feel betrayed. I know what it feels like to have the rug pulled out from under you, to think you have everything only to find that it was built on lies. But I also know what it's like to rise from that, to find your strength again, to look at yourself in the mirror and realize that you're not just surviving, you're thriving. That's what I want to share with you tonight. The words came easily. I had rehearsed them in my head 1,000 times, but speaking them out loud to a crowd of strangers made them real. For the first time in my life, I felt like I truly belonged, like my story wasn't just mine, it was something others could learn from. It wasn't about revenge, it was about resilience. The applause that followed was louder than I expected, and as I stepped off the stage, I felt a rush of warmth. This was what it felt like to be seen, to be heard, and it was the moment I realized just how far I had come. The next day, I received a phone call from my publisher. The book deal was confirmed. I would be writing a memoir, one that chronicled my journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately healing. It felt surreal, but it was also a reminder of everything I had worked for, everything I had overcome. But as my career began to soar, Ella and James were left in the ruins of their own making. Ella, who had once mocked me for not having it all, now watched as my life continued to improve. She had lost her friends, her credibility, and any respect I had once had for her. James, once a successful businessman, was now struggling. His career had faltered, and he was isolated, unable to repair the damage he had done. He had reached out to me several more times, but I never responded. One afternoon, as I was finishing up some work at my desk, I received another text from James. "Sophia, I know I messed up. Please, I need to talk to you. I've lost everything. I don't know what to do." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell him I was sorry for everything he was going through. Part of me wanted to reach out, to show him some kind of compassion. But then I remembered how he had betrayed me, how he had abandoned me when I needed him most. I remembered how even now, after everything that happened, he still couldn't take full responsibility for his actions. I didn't respond. Instead, I deleted the message, letting it go like the last remnants of a past that no longer had a place in my life. After all that, I learned a valuable lesson about life, and it made me incredibly strong. I had rebuilt my life brick by brick. I had learned to trust myself again, to see my worth, and in doing so, I had found a strength I never knew I had. James and Ella thought they could break me, but all they did was push me towards something better. They had underestimated me, just as they had underestimated my resilience. And in the end, it was their downfall, not mine. I had come full circle. I was at peace, not because of the failures of others, but because I had learned to thrive in spite of them. And I knew deep down that my journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. As I sat back in my chair, the phone buzzing with new messages, I smiled. This was my story now, and I was the one writing it. The past was gone, and the future was mine. If you've ever had to rebuild from a broken place, or if you've ever had someone betray you in the worst way, know this: you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone dim your light. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about what you do to them, it's about what you do for yourself. If you've been through something similar or have found strength after betrayal, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going. And if you want to stay up to date on more stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.